welcome to the Co-Creating Change Festival. It's Wednesday. My name's Sarah Blowers and I'm the director of the Co-Creating Change Network. So we're going to think about, can you change the rules? Can you change the law by thinking about co-creation? And so Michael Chandler is the CEO, I hope I'm saying that right, am I saying that right, of Union Chapel, and Katy Rubin runs Legislative Theatre, and you're in brilliant hands, and it's going to be an interactive session, so do feel free to come to the front, and I'm going to be quiet now and hand over. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Michael. I'm from Union Chapel, as Sarah mentioned. First and foremost, I just wanted to say a huge thank you. It's a privilege to be here. And a pleasure to be amongst yourselves. I'm massively inspired by the Co-Creating Change Network, all of your wonderful organisations and practitioners. And it's great to be able to share our wonderful project with you. Secondly, I just wanted to flag that I'm a little bit under the weather, and a little bit nervous. It's interesting being in a room full of people and having not spoken in a room full of people for a little while now. So it's been 2 years. So. If I go off-piste and start talking about Peppa Pig or anything, do forgive me. So I'm just going to say a few words about Union Chapel and how this project came about. Union Chapel is mainly known as a performing arts venue up in North London, but it's also got this fascinating, rich heritage and history around nonconformism. It was set up by a nonconformist congregation back in 200 years ago, and that congregation and nonconformism more generally has been at the forefront of radical activism, social justice issues over the last 200 years. And that's kind of really embedded in the organisation at Union Chapel. And we are also a charity, a community charity, which over the last 30 years has been supporting people with lived experience of homelessness, experiencing crisis, providing training and employment programs, and also creative programs as well. So just a bit of a background of where we are, or who we are. I joined in 2019, and one of the first ambitions was to bring all of this amazing work together, this culture, this community, this social justice, this heritage in Union. And exploring how we reposition ourselves as an organisation with all of those at the forefront. And as part of that, we wanted and needed to involve our community at the heart of what we were doing. And we wanted to move towards a much more co-created approach across the organisation. And we were developing, and still are developing, a new space which will become a community-led hub in the next few years. To do this, we started a conversation with Katy about 2 years ago about how we might use legislative theatre as an approach to build a community group and to position that community group at the heart of our decision-making, informing us at all levels, from programming to planning to structural changes and so on. I've seen the benefit and the impact of Theatre of the Oppressed from my work at Cardboard Citizens prior to Union Chapel, and I'd seen the amazing work of Katy in New York and Manchester, so it felt like a bit of a no-brainer. And then the pandemic hit. And if anything, this project and this approach became even more urgent and timely. Positioning the voices and the experiences of our community, and particularly the hardest hit in our community, at the forefront of our decision-making post-pandemic was an absolute priority. I should say, when we closed as a venue, we quickly pivoted towards delivering a community emergency response. We supported a number of rough sleepers into shelter with the local council. We worked with amazing community groups and charities to do this. And we heard from working with people experiencing crisis, experiencing isolation, the hardest hit, that they wanted more creative and empowering programs. So we went back to Katy and we said, look, this is even more of a priority for us now. We want to bring and build our networks with community organisations, but also build a group of individuals who are from our local community to inform what we should be doing now and what we should do in the future. But even more pressingly, because of, I think you'll be massively aware that during the pandemic, the social justice and climate justice issues that came to the fore And what we realized through our communications with and working with people that were being the hardest hit is that services were not providing the services that they needed to. There was a massive gap in communication. Most services shut down. Most services were not doing face-to-face support, and that meant a massive digital divide for a number of people in our communities. And through that, we felt like actually we have an opportunity here. We have a platform. Our space is known. We are seen and accessed, and we have audiences from the most affluent in our community, but we're also seeing and working with, and we also are part of the hardest hit in our community. We have an opportunity, we have a duty to do something here. So at that point, we went back to Katy, and we put a call out across Islington, and these wonderful people came forward. And I'll let Katy take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. I'm not going to say much more, just to say we worked only over Zoom in January through March of this year, so we haven't seen each other in person or on Zoom, more or less since March, and then we've just come together 2 times on Zoom before today. And there's another 4 of us that are missing today because they have other jobs or other things going on. So this is half of our group of facilitators in training. And that was the focus of the project, was actually training more leaders in using legislative theater and other creative methodologies around structural change, rule-making, policy-making. So today, we are continuing that training and that learning with all of you. Part of, I think, my understanding of co-creation is to expose the process of learning, to be doing the process of learning in front of each other, and not just bringing a finished product. So in that spirit, we are all learning. I'm going to be back up. I might pop in a little bit, but mostly back up. And we've actually never done any of this in person. So we're really excited to be here, as Michael said. So it might be messy, as co-creation is messy. I think democracy is messy, and I like to see how democracy is messy. So today you are going to see how democracy is messy. So I just gave you a great disclaimer, because if you say this is messy, that's what we said at the beginning. It is messy, but we can revel in the messiness, and we're going to do sort of a mock legislative theater process, a model, with some awesome actual people who make rules and policies, who we'll introduce in a little while. But it's a mock or a model, but it's also real, because we are real, the issues are real, today is a real day, so we might come up with some real proposals. You all have proposal sheets near you. If you don't have one, you'll get one. You'll need them later, so just keep an eye on that. You don't have to put anything on it yet. I think that's about it. So, I will just say also, you're going to see part of our plan we created. Paul will say more about that on Zoom. Watching a Zoom show in a real live space is different. So just pretend you're on Zoom while you're watching, and it'll feel really super, super theatrical. And so thank you for bearing with us in that way. And because these are real life issues, specifically today, looking at power and equity in arts organizations, that's what we're going to be looking at specifically, among other issues. Because these are real life issues and we're going to be engaging you, we need you to warm up like we've been doing. So, I'm going to pass it over to Christina.
Hi everyone, let's be active. I want everyone to raise your right hand and try to make a circle with this hand. I can see everyone, good. Now it's going to get more complicated, because I want you to raise your left hand and try to make a cross at the same time you are doing a circle with the right one. I can see it's messy. You get in there. I'm going to hand over to Paul now for the next game. I see you're confused, as it should be.
Thank you, Christina. I saw a whole sea of waving hands, and we're going to play a second game of opposites. In this game, I'm going to say one thing, yes, and you're going to say no, the opposite. Yes. No. Yes. No. No. Yes. No. Yes. 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 No. No. Yes. Up. Down. Yes. Up. Yes. No. Down. I'm getting confused. You're meant to get confused before me, but I'm getting confused for you. One more. Yes. No. Yes. Up. Down.
No, yes.
Yes.
No.
Did you enjoy this? No? Yes, excellent. That's great. So it's all whenever we do our sessions, we always start with some game to start sort of, decombusting ourselves, decombobulating, decompressing, de-ing ourselves. And we're going to show you in a moment the video of the performance we did. So the 8 of us got together over a series of 10, 12 sessions over Zoom, and we very much brought our lived experiences to this. And early on we got into groups, we spoke about our experiences and what happened, and then used these as the foundations for the stories you're going to see. And so, for example, you will be seeing the edited version, which is focused on the middle and last parts, which are particularly relevant to arts organisations and people in the arts. So at the end, you'll be invited to think about policy and issues pertaining to this field I expect you'll have more familiarity with. The play, however, starts with a scene about housing, and this was based on myself, David, and Detroit's experiences of homelessness and going through the supported housing system. And then you'll see where it picks up is with Detroit then going to the doctors and having problems with the surgery, and then on to somebody who again starts at the doctors and then goes and has a particular set of experiences at work in an arts organisation. So without further ado, I'll ask John, I've remembered your name, to fire, shoot, roll. Thank you all.
Oh, hello, how can I help?
Sorry, I have an appointment like 20 minutes ago.
Could you give me your name?
My name is Maria.
Your surname?
Garcia.
Garcia?
Garcia.
Garcia?
Garcia.
Oh, Garcia. Oh, you should have said so. Okay, hold on one moment, please.
Hello?
Hello, Dr. Deddy. Your 2:30 appointment is here. Shall I send her in?
Yes, send her in, please. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Miss Garcia, if you wouldn't mind going to room number 3. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
Oh, hello, Miss Garcia. What seems to be the problem today?
I just, been here before, but I wonder if I can speak with psychologists, because I'm having a lot of problems with, like concentrating and I'm not sleeping very well. And also start to see, things moving, like letters from documents. I'm a bit like, I'm a bit nervous about this because I didn't have this before. We talk about the chronic pain I have for years, but there's
okay, we need to talk about one issue at a time, I'm afraid. I'm going to need you to slow down a little bit. If there's multiple issues, you're going to have to make extra appointments, I'm afraid.
I did the other appointment like 3 weeks ago, and we just decided to talk about psychology today. So I wonder if I can speak with somebody.
Well, I remember, Miss Garcia, that I think you came to me before, and I'm afraid that there's a very, very long waiting list to see a psychologist for assessment. And we need to have tried other strategies first, for example, the antidepressants that I advised. You seem to be suffering from low mood, but tell me, do you work?
I'm working. Yes, I'm working pretty much 6 days a week.
Oh, well, that's good. That's very positive that you are managing that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been complicated with all the symptoms I'm having, and I'm just I don't know how.
Well, everyone's suffering from workplace stress at the moment. It's a very difficult time. As I said, I really suggest that you do try some antidepressants. But first, how much are you drinking?
I actually drink a few times a week because we are a music venue. So I work in the cultural sector. So my boss constantly invites us for drinks after the play and stuff. But I don't think I have any problem with that. It's just I've been kind of forced to stay over because if we don't stay, we start. It's a kind of gathering. So
you are going to need to have a look at our drinking advice, please, especially if I'm going to prescribe you these antidepressants. So I've suggested citalopram, a minimum dose to start with.
No, I don't want to take. Sorry, I don't want to take citalopram because I just took it before. I think we talked about this last week that I took all of these things before for chronic pain and I have problems.
I'm afraid it's our first primary care for low mood, which it seems you're suffering from. And until you give these a chance, I'm going to have to, we also have the peer support meetings I suggested. Can I give you one of those?
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. Well, I suggest you go to one of those. Many of our patients find those extremely helpful, especially while they're getting settled on antidepressants.
Sorry, is any possibility that I can go to this after hours because these times are all in the working hours and I don't think I can do this with work.
Well, I'm afraid that's just the way it is. I can sign you off for a few days if you think you'd find that helpful.
Oh, no, please. I don't want my work to know about this.
Okay, well, I'm offering you what I can, Miss Gattia, and I'm afraid if you don't want to take time off and you can't go to the support groups, I think it's even more important that you give these a try. I'm going to take this, please. I'm starting on a minimum dose. If you have any side effects, you can call the surgery and ask questions. They're not going to interact with anything else that you are taking. And do look at the alcohol advice sheet as well. I'm afraid we're running out of time, actually. So I've got another patient coming very soon. If you need to make another appointment, you can do that. Miss Garcia, sorry. Hello?
Hi, Dr. Deddy, your 245 is here. Should I send them in?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Goodbye, Miss Gattia.
I just never get understood what I want to say, and I'm just really stressed. I wish this place will be more able to help me. Now I'm gonna be late. They never listen.
Okay, everybody, is everybody ready for the meeting? Are we all here?
I'm late. I'm sorry. I'm coming. Hi.
Time, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes. You all right? Looking a bit tired.
Yeah.
Looking a bit tired there, not your normal pretty self.
What are you fine, Susie?
Okay, well, when you're ready, we'll go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're back here, Islington People's Theatre. Yep.
Yeah.
All ready to go? So, last year we were the best theatre in Islington. We need to get that going again this year round. Yeah, so I need some ideas about how to bring that forward. Any ideas?
Yeah, I emailed you everything. Did you check my new ideas?
When did you email me?
Last month.
Last month. At least you know how busy I am. New guy, Seb. Any ideas? You want to bring a new crowd in? Any ideas?
I've got one word for you, Jack. TikTok.
What's that?
TIK.
TikTok. Okay, tell me more.
We're going to get out there, we're going to get our phones out, we're going to make a couple of movies, stick it online, the kids are going to float in.
Brilliant, love it. Love it.
Yeah, Great.
I told you before about that idea. And you
What's
said,
that, Lisa?
I told you before about TikTok. I explained everything exactly much better than Speedy Zep, but
TikTok? When did you give me this idea?
last month I
Last
sent,
month.
I made,
Did you send me a proposal?
of course, and I even made a presentation on your.
All right, okay. Right. We've only got a short limited amount of time. There's no need to go on about it. Like if I have seen, Maria, can you make sure I get an update on that email that Lisa sent? But for now, let's Seb, can you elaborate on the TikTok idea?
Jack, it's so simple. Me and you, we'll get out there, get our cameras out. Got Abigail come, she's really good at it, and we'll film, we'll record, we'll talk, we'll laugh, we'll joke. Everyone will come running.
Love it.
Well, when you didn't like it.
Lisa, one, come on. Maybe, Seb, if you work with Lisa on this, you can give her an update on your ideas, and then
I'll tell her ins and outs.
Any more ideas? David?
That's what it is. That's why you didn't hear me. I was off. Listen, talking about TikTok, what about funding? Funding. I've talked to you about it before. You can't introduce any more policies without funding. So that should be first on the agenda, okay?
Yeah, that's an important point. So if you work together with Lisa on that, so maybe I'll just put Seb on the TikTok project and you work together with Lisa on the funding project. Sound good? Great. Let's get on to the next issue. Anyone else got any ideas?
Yeah, about the funding, we made another meeting about it, that we have to attract more community.
Lisa, do we need another meeting if you're going to work with David?
I offered to help you in that too. I offered to help you.
The thing is, we're doing just meetings.
Lisa, let's have solutions, not problems.
The solution is the funding deadline is next week, and we're just talking about it. But
we work with David on it.
Yes,
Maria, you okay then?
Yes.
Are you up to date with everything?
Yes. I just forwarded.
All right, so Lisa and David are going to work together on the funding opportunity. Seb is going to go through the TikTok proposal with Lisa. I know Lisa's got some loose ideas on it already, but Seb's going to fill her in. Are we all up to date with that? Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to me before, we won't just waste the 1 month. I already told everything.
Lisa, come on, no need to be hysterical. We're all trying to work together. We're trying to be a team, and you're just bringing problems at me. I mean,
I'm working a lot more than everyone, and I made a proposal about everything.
Okay, all right, Lisa, perhaps you and I should have some time. Guys, I think we're done with the meeting. Lisa and I are just going to have a little catch up. Seb, perfect, good initiative, love it. Maria, next time come a little earlier. And wear that shirt that you normally wear.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, what's going on? You're normally so positive. Is it that time of the month or something?
No, I mean...
What's I don't understand all this interrupting. You know I value your opinions.
You don't just care what we told. I already sent you. I made a presentation. I sent 3 different mails about TikTok.
Lisa. Look, Seb is a new guy. We're all about equality here. We need to embrace new people. We need to work as a team. You know I value your ideas, but you know.
I've already told everything what we told.
Lisa, where's that smile I love, huh? Where's that smile? Where's that smile I love?
I'm not smiling now. We're talking about work, right? Why should I smile to you?
You know, everyone, that's why you were hired, because of that bubbly nature. Do you know how many women applied?
What do you mean?
Anyway, I gotta go. 5 minutes left, but you're happy? You're gonna work with Seb? Perfect.
John here. Hello?
Hello, John. Welcome back. Welcome back, mate. How are you?
I don't know. Mate, you sent me all over the place. I went to the doctors, the GP, yeah? And I can't get a GP because I ain't got a place.
Right. So, you didn't, they didn't sign you up?
I can't because I don't have an address. And some guy was telling me about Amsterdam something. I don't even remember, but I didn't even write down. It was either go there or come back here. It's like Friday, and I'm on like.
Right. And
what GP do I go?
Something permanent you was looking for.
I need an address to go to the GP. I don't have an address. I live on the street. It's Friday.
Right. Oh.
They said I can't sign up at the GP. Do you have a GP I can go? I don't know.
What I'd suggest is you make your way down, have a chat with the social worker. I'm going to write it down for you, and then we'll see you there, sir. But I'm going to... It's 5 o'clock. I've got to clock off. Like I said, it's something permanent. We need a bit more from you, sir, if you want to stay in the area and you've got this caring connection, sir. So I'll write it down for you, but I think that's about it at this point in time. But bring the evidence, and I'll be more than happy to help.
I've got all this evidence. I've got all of my papers. I've got notes, my old address, all of that. But
sorry, sir. I would need a bit more.
And then I keep going around in circles. Social worker. How do I do that?
I'll write it down for you, sir. I'll give you the number. We've got a phone. You give them a tinkle pop.
You know what? I'm gone, man. I don't know. I had them back.
That'll be your choice, sir. Should you want the address or not?
Well done, guys.
Good morning.
Right, I hope you enjoyed it. So, what I want to do now, I want to ask you all I want to ask anyone if you could see any problems within any of the issues that anyone had in the little video. So can someone put their hand up and tell me what they saw or any of the problems that they faced? If you could identify any particular problems. Yes, sir. What was that? Communication. Right. Could you elaborate further, please?
Thank you. Especially in the first performance, like when the woman was trying to explain to the receptionist or something, trying to get across her problems and what she wanted her to do. The receptionist wasn't really listening to her, and that was a problem.
Right, so the receptionist was dismissive, so to speak. Right, could anyone add to that, or did anybody see anything further? Yes, madam at the back.
I'm Annika.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone seemed to be short of time, so everything was being really rushed. There was never time to complete anything or to hear anything.
Right, lack of time. Right. Did anybody see anything else? Yes. Hi.
I'm coming. I'm coming.
Racism, I was going to say, because Gauzia was having her name mispronounced.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Hannah Branca? Okay, cool. Right, so firstly, Gauzia had her name mispronounced in all the ways you can think of, and some you couldn't think of. Basically, those who weren't white or native English speakers were getting pretty much dismissed because they were allegedly not understandable. And I was also going to say sexism, because the women were the ones who were emailing and sharing suggestions, but it was the new bloke who came on the team that took all the credit.
Right, yeah.
So I know that's two issues, but I just had to say it.
No, that's good. That's good. Brilliant. Thank you. Racism and sexism. Did anybody see anything else, or does anybody want to add to that?
Coming.
Sexism or racism, or both, in the workplace?
Gaslighting. So there was complete gaslighting in the workplace, gaslighting in the doctor's appointment from the doctor and the receptionist. And I was going to touch on the sexism as well. It seemed to only only the women in the workplace seem to be gaslighted. But yeah.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate what you mean by gaslighting exactly? Because there's different interpretations of that.
So my personal interpretation of gaslighting is when your opinions and your thoughts, which are completely valid, are sidelined.
Right.
And they're made to not feel valid as they are.
Right.
And you're like oppressed as a result. You're made to feel like your opinions aren't as valid as they're meant to be.
Right.
So in the workplace, for example, when Maria was talking about her proposal, and when the other workforce woman was talking about her proposal, talking about how she created the YouTube link and et cetera, but the boss was really like dismissive of her and just saying like, oh, you know, that's all right, the new bloke on the team, just give him some space, et cetera. So both the women were gaslighting that situation.
Right, and do you think they were gaslighted because of the sex?
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Charlotte, can you take that further, please?
I can move on to the next section, unless there's anything else anyone has to say that they identified. So thanks for your contributions there. And going forward, as Paul mentioned earlier, we will be focusing on inequalities and oppressions that we've kind of seen or experienced in arts institutions specifically. So in the spirit of solidarity, I'm going to ask you about problems you may have experienced or witnessed in arts institutions. Please only raise your hand if you feel comfortable, and I'm not going to ask you to describe anything specific. So raise your hand if you've seen or experienced power imbalances in arts institutions. Power imbalances. Raise your hand if you've experienced classism in arts institutions. Raise your hand if you've seen or witnessed sexism or sexual harassment in arts institutions. And finally, raise your hand if you've seen or experienced burnout or issues with physical or mental health in arts institutions. Big one for that. So that's a lot of people, and actually, you know, quite shocking and unacceptable that those things are still rife. And I'm going to pass over to Christina to explore it further.
So I want to say, if you were one of the characters facing these problems, can you think what would you do, or what might you want to change to get the character's needs? I would like to ask you to discuss this with your partner or the person close to you for a few minutes, and we will carry on from them. How did you find this? I guess complicated, right? Is anyone feel kind of ready to come and try one of these ideas within the scene that we prepared with the boss? Do you think you can represent the character? You think you can represent one of the characters in order to help to get their needs on? So basically, we're going to set up the scene, and you can participate like by interchanging with our character Lisa or the scene of the EP, and you can just try to make the change that you just discussed with your partners. Here, the lady. You can come here if you want. Yeah. Yay! Oh, a big applause for this. Hi, what's your name?
Lauren.
Lauren, thank you for coming. Where do you like to take the scene from?
So the doctor scene where
Okay.
she's getting misinterpreted.
Which character are you playing?
The patient.
Can I ask, do you want to go from the beginning or kind of somewhere in the middle? Like, do you have a point where you want to start your idea? Just the beginning is fine? Are we ready? Great. Can I just give you one little, two rules. You can do anything you want, right? This is theater. You can bring in any tools, resources. There might be even other people at your disposal, so feel free to go wild. The only thing you can't do is actually hurt anyone on the stage. And for the sake of COVID, we won't do any touching. So if your idea involves some physical contact, we'll just do that with distance. Does that sound okay? Because, you know, anything is possible. Great? Ready? All right, can we count them in? 3, 2, 1, action.
Hello, Ms. Garcia. What seems to be the problem today?
So I'm having some difficulty concentrating. Words are getting a bit muddled on paper. My head's just a bit mush.
Okay. So would you say that you're suffering from low mood, or have you got a lot of stress going on at the moment?
I mean, it's frustrating because I'm getting confused easily. I wouldn't necessarily say it's stressful, yeah, but it's not necessarily a low mood.
Okay, well, I mean, have you tried taking any antidepressants? That's usually the first sort of port of call for these kinds of issues. It could be that you're feeling confused and, you know, struggling to express yourself because you've got a lot going on in your mind, and maybe these might help to take the edge off things for you for a little while.
I think what I'd personally prefer to do is have some psychological help and support.
Right, I see. Well, we do have all these drop-in groups that you can go to. That would be the most immediate thing I can do for you. They're peer support groups. I've got a leaflet about them here. Unfortunately, the waiting list for any kind of assessment at the moment is extremely long unless it's very urgent. So if you have a look at those and see if you can go along, that might be a good starting point. But I do highly recommend that you try at least taking a low dose of antidepressant to see if it helps you out at all.
I can see that you don't offer any out-of-hours peer support
No,
groups.
I'm afraid we don't. You know, as you can imagine, staff are only working to support these groups 9 to 5. Well, actually, they finish at 4 most of the time. But, you know, I'm afraid that's all we've got on offer at the moment. I can't really create something that's not there for you.
I don't personally want to chemically imbalance my body. I think I'd rather psychologically get some support, and I think, you know, is there nothing else out of hours that you could offer, because this obviously is going to just cause more.
I'm afraid for anything like that, you're going to have to go to an out-of-hours service. You can call 111, but only if it's urgent.
Hello, Dr. Doc. Your next patient's coming through in 30 seconds. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let the next patient through now. If you need another appointment, feel free to book at reception.
Can I not complete my appointment now? Or is there anyone else you can signpost me to for any
Well, as I
talking
said,
therapy?
there's a crisis line at the bottom of the peer support groups paperwork that I've given you. You can go to an out-of-hours service or call 111 if it's very urgent, but other than that, I'm afraid I suggest you make another appointment.
Okay.
And you can talk to the receptionist as well if you change your mind about the prescription.
Can I speak to any superior doctors, maybe, perhaps, that might offer some other support?
We do have a complaints procedure. The receptionist will be able to guide you through that. There's some paperwork to fill in, or you can just arrange an appointment to speak to the receptionist.
Oh, no, I mean like someone else that would offer some psychological help.
I'm afraid, other than the drop-in service that I've given you at the hospital and the peer support groups, there isn't. Sorry, I'm going to have to let the next patient in now, but you can make another appointment if you wish.
I think I'll change my doctors.
Thank you.
Stand here for a second if you want. Yeah, we're just going to talk about
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Another round of applause. Wonderful. Great. Can I ask, what did anyone pick up from that further intervention? Any more reflections on that? Yes? Oh, we're going to pass you the microphone. Thank you.
Just lack of resources. It's like the doctor, the GP doesn't have the time to listen, and also there's not any other different avenues. You're just giving antidepressants, and that doesn't work for all. So I feel sorry for both sides, because they can only deliver so much in that time limit, and there's not enough time to look at the whole, the person and everything that's going on. So they just can't give that advice and time to them.
Sure.
But the other person is leaving out thinking, what the was the point of me coming to this appointment?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure, I guess, there's a common experience for anyone here, going to the doctors, there not being enough time, and a setting where you're not heard. And a show of hands, who's experienced that? We know this to be very true for so many of us. Unless you click the option for the £70 private appointment, which is very unavailable for so many people. Any other thoughts on that scene? Any other sort of barriers that were presented? So we had one about the sort of institutional setting and resources. Is there any other barriers present? Any other issues that were emerged? Oh, thank you.
I've got a question online.
Oh, sorry, a question online, and then you will go next.
From Inez. The volunteer actor was brilliant, but it's pretty heartbreaking how hard it is to break the cycle, isn't it? Even within this fictional setting.
Yeah, I apologise for being so harsh still, but that was really based on true experiences that I've had, other people I know have had, and I know other people that we work with on this project have had. And yeah, I think you made a good point about, there is a certain amount of pressure on the doctors as well, and that, everyone is oppressed on some level. I definitely don't sympathise with the doctors, but I can try and empathise. But it was really hard, even with what you gave me. I just felt like I couldn't offer anything else, and I wouldn't have offered anything else. I think changing the doctor was the best policy. And you did ask for the complaints procedure, which Maria didn't do, because she was so beaten down. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. No, speak away. Thank you. Last comments on it? Mr. Christina Poulton? Blue scarf.
I think, is it Lauren? Sorry, I can't, yeah. Lauren was kind of showing that often with those systems, if you can speak up for yourself and push a little bit more, you do get more. So then it's only the people who have the confidence and the communication skills to be able to do that. And there's quite often an imbalance of what you can get out of a system based on how you can communicate in that system.
Absolutely. For so many people, it's a bit of a survival of the fittest system, isn't it? It's very unfortunate.
Can I ask a question, Paul? Quick question? Because we're talking about arts institutions also, and this scene fed into the next scene, right? And one of the barriers was not being able to go to the groups during the workday, or not feeling comfortable saying they were going to take some sick days. So I'm curious, as we start to think about structural changes, what are the kind of rules or barriers that we're starting to understand or suspect or maybe have experienced in those cultural institutions that are additionally making it hard for that character to get what they need? Can anybody name any of those? What is going on? What is the problem?
Hang on. Getting my 10,000 steps in.
I think there's something around capacity in arts organisations, so people are fearful of taking time off because of who's going to cover that work, or how's that work going to get done, or what, sometimes it feels like it's more work to have time off because you've got to do all the stuff before you have the time off, or then catch up when you get back. So I think there's a real danger of burnout with a lot of people in arts organisations, and a fear of acknowledging that and going, actually, mental health is more important.
So that's interesting. So the danger of missing hours or not being there because of the security of your job, but also feeling like you might be letting down your coworkers.
Yeah.
I see maybe one more back there. I just want to hear if there's anything else, because this might feed into our ideas in about 8 minutes. Oh, where are we going?
I'm coming.
Wherever we're going, we trust
Sorry,
you,
I'm right at the back. This is actually not necessarily just arts organisations, but I say stigma around mental health, because
you're not feeling able, like you're able to raise it as a concern because you're worried about the way other people will perceive you or how serious they'll take it. And I don't think that's just arts organisations, but in this case.
One more. Just going over
So
here.
stigma, yeah, great.
Just going over here.
I think there's something as well about creative institutions where there is a certain amount of, where there's creativity, there's also flexibility, which creates potentially a lack of boundaries. So it's unclear when you should stop working or how to kind of instill those boundaries for yourself to protect your mental health.
Wow, so the idea of flexibility might be leading to a lack of boundaries where it's unclear when you are or should able to, when you are able to stop working. Fascinating. Okay, that gave us some nice things for later, yeah? Yeah? Feeling good about that? Thank you. Pass it back to you, Paul, for the next.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Wonderful. Katie, do we have time for one more intervention? Brilliant. We're going to do one more. One more of you, if may like to take the opportunity to join us on stage, act out, and be a person in one of the scenes and direct it in a way that you feel may work. Would anyone like to come forward?
Specifically
Your
the
hand
arts
was up so
institution
quick,
scene?
couldn't say no.
The workplace scene?
Please come up.
Yeah. Woo! Thank you.
What's your name? Halima. Great. What scene are you thinking of doing? Right, so that was right at the end. So that was with the sexist CEO, and Gamza's character was meeting after the meeting, and he was all like, "Oh, why aren't you smiling?" and la-di-da-di-da. Yeah, brilliant. So the CEO is, we need to, because Latoya isn't here as the CEO, we're looking for one of us to take on that
I think it's
task.
Michael.
Oh, Michael. Oh, thank you, Michael. Just to attest. You got the blazer now, yeah, it's added dimension. Just to attest that Michael is very far from this character. It's been widely reported, so hopefully you can stretch to fulfill that. Great, so without further ado, need a microphone, and Halima needs a microphone.
I should add that I did this under duress, okay?
In this work, we are doing a service to the cause of change and liberation to show the oppression as awful as it really is. So please.
All
Yes.
Right. Lisa, what's up? What's going on?
I'm upset
Yeah, I can tell you're upset. What are you upset about?
because I don't feel appreciated.
You don't feel appreciated. Come on. I appreciate you.
You don't.
I think everyone appreciates. I really appreciate you.
I don't feel appreciated or acknowledged for everything I do.
Well, look, just because I missed that email and I didn't see the presentation, that doesn't mean you're not appreciated. I think you're great.
You're not listening.
I am listening.
You're not listening.
I am listening.
I sent you an email 1 month ago with presentations, with everything put down in order. You completely ignored it. And then today you decided to listen to some guy with bloody sunglasses on and give him what? A pat on the back?
It's
No,
important.
I'm sorry.
It's important that we welcome and support our new staff members. All right, and that's what I was doing today. And I thought his idea was great, by the way. Now, if I didn't see your presentation, that's because I'm extremely busy. You know how busy I am.
But that's your job.
What's my job?
To look at the email.
Well, to be honest, I have a PA, and you know that Chantel's a very good PA, and she deals with the majority of my
You
emails.
put out a proposition and said, can somebody come back with ideas? I gave you all the ideas. You had a month till this morning to listen, to acknowledge, to read all my emails. You actually decided to not even bother looking at it. Then you're asking somebody else on the team to go back and look at my email. I spent a lot of time and effort putting down, and then it's like, oh, go away now and give somebody else to work. No, I'm sorry, that is not my job, and your job is to sit there and listen and read my emails, for God's sake.
Well, that's your perspective, but that's not my perspective.
So what is your perspective?
I did see your email. I thought, what's his name? What's your name?
Seb.
I thought Seb's idea was fantastic. And I think he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, he probably has.
He's got a lot of potential. And it would just be good if you could work collaboratively with him rather than these issues. I'm hearing issues.
No,
I want
not
solutions.
Issues. There's a hierarchy going on. You're telling us what to do. We do the work. You're not supporting us. You're not helping us. You're not even listening.
I am listening.
You're not listening.
I'm here. I'm
You're
listening.
arguing with me. You're not listening to my point. I'm really sorry.
Good, Halima. Anything else you want to do before? What do you want to do next?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but if I'm not going to be part of this team, and if you're not going to be a team player, then really this isn't for me.
Well, that's your choice.
Thank you.
All right.
I just want to do a shameless plug that Halima is running a session on Friday online as part of the festival called She Spoke, and it's really good.
Thank you. Sorry. So, what can you identify that something that's dry that in respect with the other character? Anybody? What's he did that was changing the situation?
Who's got their hand? Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it was wrong on so many levels, but one of the really frustrating, the lame excuses the guy gave was, I'm really, really busy. It's part of your job, and you know, if you take things seriously, you will not say, I'm really, really busy. That is a lame excuse. It just goes to show that you're stressed out and you don't really give a shit about your job. Excuse my French, but yeah, that's really true. I'm busy. And at one point, he was referring to another colleague of his, and he said, what's his... He couldn't even pronounce his name right. That is also more subtle racism, and just everything about and saying, and it's a deep insult to say to somebody, I do care about you. What do you mean? Talking to somebody like that, it just shows that, you know, you don't care at all, and also not apologising. You know, if somebody puts out that you're in the wrong, at least say, even if you don't think you're in the wrong, at least say, I'm sorry you feel like that. But there were no apologies. It's like saying, you're the one that's in the wrong, and yeah, it was wrong on so many levels. Yeah, but very well acted, and a very important point to make across.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here.
One thing I thought was very clever of Halima, I think it was, sorry, was she actually started copying some of the CEO's language. And unfortunately, that can be a little bit of a survival tactic, like trying to beat the baddies at their own game by trying to be like them. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, sort of thing. And the arts industry relies a lot, I mean, all job industries do on some level, but there's a lot of reliance on integration, assimilation and things. And that can be tricky for so many creeds of people, you know?
Yes, you're totally right. Is anybody have to add something? Want to add something?
Yeah, I'm going to
There's
the back.
a lady at the back.
What I found really interesting that Halima did was that she stood her ground. So she didn't allow the CEO to like walk all over her. So I really appreciated that, just to be able to see it, and it was in an articulate manner. So good on that. But I feel like a point that's really important to highlight is that Halima shouldn't feel like she has to leave. The CEO should be able to create an environment where she feels valued and she's worthy to be there. So for her only option for her to leave should not be like accepted, and it shouldn't be encouraged either. Halima should feel like she can go to work in her opinions and her points of view are valued. And if the CEO can't do that, it's the CEO who needs to leave, not Halima. So for the fact that she has to feel like her only way out is to quit is quite disappointing. And I feel like that's also, like, in the industry, it's very easy for people to feel like they're disposable. To feel like, oh, if you're not going to do the job, if you don't feel like, if you don't do what I tell you to do, then I'll just get someone else to replace you. When really it shouldn't be like that. Really it should be, you're here because you're worthy to be here. If I'm not able to create that environment for you, then I'm the one who needs to fix my own stuff. And if possible, I need to leave. Yeah.
Yes, taking responsibility. You want to say something?
I was just thinking about it myself.
Can you use your mic?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Maybe she could have invited, or maybe there should be a structure where people can invite another member of staff with them to witness the conversation. I was just thinking about that when you said that. And also, yeah, being able to leave your job is a massive privilege that not everyone has. Like, it's a financial privilege, it's a class privilege. Not everyone can just drop their job and leave, and shouldn't have to. So.
Exactly.
Can we build on that and on what you just said and think about what are some other kind of structural ideas that might be inspired by what we saw? Yeah.
Yeah, what are the barriers that are stopping here the progress of the structure? Anyone want to say it?
I'm coming.
Yeah.
If she wants to bring someone to the meeting with her, then she should join a union, and then she can bring someone into the workplace, into every meeting with her boss.
Join a union.
Anybody else want to? Yeah. Up in front of you. Yeah.
Thing is, though, I mean, I don't know a whole lot, but as far as I know, unions cost, like, I don't know, like, I think you might have to pay to join unions, and also a lot of unions aren't necessarily that well signposted. So there's something about privilege in there, but I just can't put my finger on it right now.
So what are the financial barriers or information barriers to joining a union? We've been talking about that with this scene. Let's just see if we can hear from anyone else, any structural ideas that might support this situation. We have one right here.
I don't know quite what it would be, but some kind of process that involves the group acknowledging the work that's been done so that there's sort of shared accountability for that rather than the boss having the right to sort of decide who's done what work and what work matters and what work doesn't. Because the work of the organisation will suffer massively because that woman will leave if she can, and that bloke's rubbish idea that he's just come up with will be the work that gets done. And I mean, no one wins ultimately then.
Yeah. Should we pass it to Paul?
Paul, okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all for your
everyone.
contributions. I was just thinking it's almost an unwritten rule that when we have organisations, we have the boss, the chief, the director, and in thinking more broadly about co-creation, you know, there's other ways in which we can work together to create change that may be more inclusive and sharing. And on that note, and how would that be written up as a policy, the policies bit, you're all going to have an opportunity, an invitation to write up a specific policy, of the word for policy is rules, for organisations, for arts organisations. This is just what you think in your world, and in possibly a perfect world, unconstrained by the realities of today. So if you would like to take the opportunity, you should all have a sheet. Has everyone got the sheet to write on? You may wish, great, you all have your sheet. You may wish to be in groups, in pairs or alone. And if you wish to write anything down, we're going to then take those and we're going to have a panel of arts industry professionals. Who shall I say? Who? We'll talk about them. Yeah, and they're going to take all these ideas and they're going to sit down and think about how they would be activated and group them up. You know, lots of you will have certain ideas that correlate. So then they're going to come up with 3 possibly which they think from their position are workable policy ideas, and then we're going to sort of open that up and look at how that would work or not, and look at maybe, you know, look at it basically. Someone else is doing that bit, so that will come. So there we are. So if you wish to take some time to write up your policies.
So you can work with a neighbor if you want. You can work alone. We encourage you to work with a neighbor. It will also help us sort them really quickly if there's fewer. So feel free to work with a neighbor or two. If you need any help writing or want us to scribe for you, just give us a wave. You have about 3 minutes, and then we will give you a break while we're sorting the ideas. So the break is coming. The break is coming. And just like Paul said, anything you'd like to see, the most important part on that sheet is the middle part. You can leave the other 2 parts blank if you want. If you need a pen, wave your hand. Go. Anything based on what we saw in those scenes, based on the structural barriers we saw. Righty, right. Wave your hand if you need any help. Yes? Yes? Yes! Yay!
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for coming back.
Let's just tell John, I know we were supposed to tell you we're back on for the Zoom, so they're turning the audience back on. They were paused. Are you ready? Are you back on? We're good to go. Okay.
All right. Cool. Welcome back. I'm just going to introduce our policymakers here. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tarek. I'm Artistic Director here at Battersea Arts Centre.
Hi, I'm EJ. I'm the co-artistic director of Strike a Light, and we're based in Gloucester.
Hello again. I'm Michael, CEO at Union Chapel Project.
So, yeah. Whoops. So we're going to hear 3 policies that they've put together from kind of summarising a lot of the stuff that came through in your forms. And who will present the first policy, and what is it?
I've got the mic. So the first policy and pile is very much about staff well-being. And the summary that we've arrived at for this range of ideas is to encourage a culture of support and inclusivity, acknowledging individual needs and building policies and culture around those needs. And some of the range of activity ideas include things like flexible working, clearer policies about time off, and so on. And there's, so much.
Okay, brilliant. So what would it take to make that happen for your institution?
I think it takes an acknowledgement from the people leading those organisations that we all come with differences to the work that we do, and that we need to have those needs supported, for an openness to say that we're not all the same. And to enforce a culture within our workplaces that mean we're not all strapped to our desks or strapped to our timetables, that we all need to work differently, that it's okay to be ill, and to have really clear ways of talking about that, and to make people feel relaxed in your organisation to be able to do the job that they want to do and can do, but know that there are support provisions around them to make that possible.
Is there any specific steps you'd have to take to make that happen?
I think a lot of it is about if we have those shared set of values and objectives that we all sign up to, and I think it's important that these things are created collectively, that there's a general understanding about what we want to do. I think investing in policies and procedures that back that up is really important, and in a sense that we police and support each other to make sure those things are done. I think it's always really important in these kind of things as well, that we have structures that feel confidential and feel safe, with multiple points that people can go and share their concerns, their ideas, so they can be acted on, so not everything is funneled through a group if there's lack of trust alongside that. So I think it needs to be put together collectively, otherwise it never becomes real. It just becomes things that are just pieces on paper or something people say in its lip service, rather than being real, and we need to support each other through that.
Okay, so changing policies and procedures could be one of the steps that makes it happen, and perhaps having staff collaborate on the creation of the policy and procedures.
I think one of the things that we've tried to do in our organisation is to ask people what do they need to do the best work that they can do. And so by opening out that question and asking people what do they need, what support do they need to do that job, I think that that suggests that we're interested in listening to the needs that you might have, and that we can find ways of accommodating that, because we all have needs. And I think if we can just open out that conversation to say we recognise that, that means the diversity of our workforce can change.
Do you think there's anything that could be done in the recruitment process to do that as well? Because I think that's a very important element of it.
Yeah, absolutely massive. I think the way that we pitch our roles, our jobs, the way that we talk to people about what those jobs are, the application process that we put out, so the language that we use in all of those recruitment, let's strip it out of lingo, let's make it real, so that we really are reaching out to people. Don't expect people to just come to your job because you've put it out there. Work with other people to advocate for the work that you do and to bring in new people into your organisation, make it really open. Am I going on a lot?
No, it's good, it's good.
No.
We're going to open up to them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to get there. So thank you for that. So can anyone see anything missing in what our policymakers are saying in terms of the steps they might take to put those policies in, well, not policies in place, but to create that change?
Amendments, maybe, things
things you might add.
So we've got, just to recap, right, we've got a new set of policies around health and well-being that are co-created by staff, by all the staff, and that include values, language, spaces for confidentiality, flexible working that is maybe clear around the boundaries of it, and it includes the way that jobs are pitched, right, and advertised to prioritize that from the very beginning. What is missing? Okay, we have two things.
Great.
Oh, thanks. Who's going to keep you accountable to all of that?
We're about to get people to make commitments, and they have to commit to one action. But with it, further on, like who in the organisation, without necessarily naming names, but what positions would be involved in those changes? That's another question for sure.
Great, so maybe there needs to be that written into the policy, that accountability force in the, cool. Okay, we're making notes on those changes,
I wonder if there's also something about it being done by example as well, so like it being very clearly communicated to the team by the people who have the most stake or power or influence, that like, for example, like, doesn't have to be given loads of your own personal information, but saying like, I am stopping work now because I am very tired and so therefore I'm going home, or like, I need to pick up my kids at 2 o'clock. If you also have caretaking responsibilities, this is always an option to you, and like, not necessarily as a leader having to say every detail of your life, but like being very, like coming forwards when you are taking advantage of the policies that you are setting out, so that people who have less confidence or power or feel more precarious feel very assured in the fact that somebody is also doing it as well, so that you're not the first person to take period leave or not the first person to take mental health leave. There's a precedent.
Awesome. That's amazing, thanks. Great suggestions.
Maybe that could even be worked into the accountability, like that's part of the oversight by the trustees of the CEO. Are they modeling health and well-being to the rest of the organization? I don't know, maybe.
Which often they don't, in my experience. But yeah, so is there any other, sorry, I didn't see if there was
Could I ask
somebody
a question?
else. Yeah.
May I ask Charlotte? Audience. How about, so I would expect in your organisation that would be very more likely to happen, but how about in less than ideal organisations like the one we caricatured in our performance, and also when we said, who's had these negative experiences in arts organisations, at some point everyone's hands went up. Is there any way that you see that being made to happen in organisations which are less functional, or what would allow that to happen as a policy?
I think organisations need to be vocal about the work that they are doing, and that these changes can be problematic, they can be difficult, and that you will make mistakes as you do them. But if you're open about that as an organisation and can encourage others and share your learning with other organisations, I think that will help make that transition easier. I don't know if it'll be faster, but I just feel like don't hide what you're doing as an organisation, because it is difficult. And if you can share that difficulty with other organisations that might be highly problematic, it might just help speed that transition.
Picking up on what somebody said as well about, mental health leave, disability leave, I've seen that in very few policies. So I think, I don't know if any of your organisations have mental health leave or disability leave written into them, but I think this is something like that when I was in a union we were discussing a lot, because most organisations don't. It's all very vague, sick leave, but if you have a long-term or chronic condition, mental health can be a chronic condition. It is for a lot of people. It's not something that they suffer from for a time. It's something that they might live with for their whole life. So, yeah.
I think that's really important. I think adding to the accountability thing, obviously we know that in the current structures within charities, the boards are ultimately accountable. So voluntary trustees, who are ultimately the people, if a staff group came together and said, this is something that needs addressing, taking to the board is probably the most powerful route that currently exists. The problem with that, obviously, is it puts the strain and the pressure and the work onto the people who are struggling within that structure to kind of do that, and that's a very hard thing to do. I think one thing, and even sitting on the side where, for example, things would be escalated to someone like me who has to investigate or take it to the board, it feels less than ideal as a system to be running. I do wonder whether we should be advocating for some more general policies or regulators or someone that people can go to that feels independent from these organizations, that complaints that is easy to use and can be searched. I think that would help organizations, that would help people feel able in a safe way to go and report things. Obviously that would take money and organization to do, but maybe there's a regional model that might be useful going forward.
Absolutely, and without the barrier to joining a union of knowing of its existence or it being actively promoted or the organisation having a representative, because sometimes if there's not enough people in an organisation that want to unionise, you can't actually join that union as that organisation, so I think that's really important.
An independent body. We had one more back there. Yeah, go ahead, and then we're going to summarize.
In fact, a lot of it's just been said, which is really about whistleblowing, I suppose, and feeling that you can go to an outside body for that. And I know that costs money, but I think that's kind of essential, especially if you've got an issue with somebody who's in a far more senior position to you and you feel very volatile.
Great. I wanted to, can I add in? Yes. I know I'm running around. I feel that there's a real juxtaposition between the work that we were talking about yesterday and hearing Chantel, incredible community producer, talking about answering WhatsApp messages at 11 o'clock at night. And I think when we do co-creation, it is often messy. And when we talk about life and death or really important things, actually particularly people in the creative industries, often work outside hours. And when you're dealing maybe within community and stuff, people are not responding. And so I think it's a really often a delicate balance, because we do often have to go that extra mile. And because we are in the creative industries, policies and procedures are often not 9 to 5. And I think navigating that balance is really super hard. And the minute you step into answering WhatsApp at 11 o'clock at night, it was probably a really important text to answer. And I think that's a really difficult position for arts organisations. I haven't got an answer.
Okay. So should we summarize where we are with that one?
Yeah. I think you've got the notes. I'm sorry, I can't. Are you able to summarize what that policy might look like now since the amendments?
Well, I think the main additions that are important here are, and I've taken in and written down here, are specifically about accountability and making sure there's a process and clarity around accountability for whatever these policies might become. There's something around ensuring that the leadership is modelling best practice here, that they are communicating to their staff that they are trying to take care of themselves, or maybe they're struggling, but this is what they're trying to do to improve that for themselves, and therefore it's okay for you to talk about it too. And then something about an external regulator. And maybe in the absence of an external regulator, maybe a group of similar like-minded arts organisations who come together and champion best practice and say, look, this is what we're doing, this is what we all should be doing. So maybe something like that in the absence of a regulator.
And recruitment policies that are fair and take into account, you know, people's barriers with health or mental health. And, you know, I've noticed some organisations actually giving people interview questions in advance, and I think that's a really good, fair recruitment policy, because, you know, some people might suffer from like terrible nerves or anxiety during interviews due to an ongoing mental health condition that, you know, that doesn't give them a fair chance at an interview, in my view. And then we're not having organisations that are actually diverse because people are not able to access those jobs because of that. So, yeah, thank you for summarising that. Now, I'd like somebody to commit to looking into it, or who will need to look into it in your organisation, Michael?
Me.
You, okay. Great. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that accountability.
There you go.
And we also just want to ask you to commit to one action that will set this in progress.
Can I just share some online stuff? Because there's some really good points before you commit to an action. I think there's also a big question about participants or service users. How are you co-creating with them or collaborating on these policies? In my setting, it would be young people, but could be any targeted demographic. Rachel Griffiths, responding to Sarah's point she just made in the room, I agree with her point, and we can model to co-create as participant artists that we all need rest and boundaries, and 4-day weeks is coming up a lot.
Yeah.
So first action from Michael, and then we'll go to policy number 2. An action you would take?
An action. I will look at our existing policies and culture. I will do a staff census check to see how everyone is. I know other organisations do this quite regularly. And we will go to our staff and ask them what policies they need to see in place, or what clarity they need to have in place to ensure that their well-being is first and foremost in our considerations. That's one, and there's some others that I will commit to too.
Brilliant. Multiple action commitments. That's what we like to see. I'm going to pass over to Paul to talk about policy number 2.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so on to policy number 2. Would you be happy to share it? What's your name?
Tarek.
Tarek's going to share policy number 2.
So there were so many that were interrelated, which are very similar, and I guess we're talking about venues, so a lot of it felt very internal looking or staff looking, but there was a lot around having a forum or the ability for honest, shared communication around issues. So we're going to come on to, I think in the next one, a bit more of the really more radical structural changing the hierarchy type stuff, but this was sort of assuming that the structures are roughly the same. How do we create a forum where there's honest, constructive, real communication across the whole staff team to enable that to happen? And there are lots of really great suggestions about that. I think things we're pulling out that make sense, sort of saying that there is never, there needs to be a commitment for the organization to do this at regular intervals. It needs to be open and transparent and everyone understand what that process is about. Obviously we understand that there's not one size fits all for people, so we're in a beautiful old town hall where there was lots of discussion happening here about the community in Wandsworth and what needed to happen. I think there's a sense that that kind of thing is useful, but not everyone feels comfortable speaking in this kind of environment openly and publicly. So trying to create a system which enables every stakeholder, staff member to be able to contribute. I think a lot of the notes here talked about staff teams, but there was also some comments in a sense about, you know, as cultural organizations, we are made up and serve lots of different people. So it's not just about the internal staff having that ability to have that two-way communication, but also the artists that are involved, the young people that are involved, the communities that are involved. So creating either one structure or multiple structures to enable that to happen. That there needs to be an opportunity for real collective decision-making within that it can't just be a talking shop where things are discussed and then no action is taken. Action needs to follow, and for that to be clear. So there was lots of stuff about inclusion, voices, creating an open forum, proper communication, and empowering people to be a part of, you know, we're all adults, you know, able to make decisions rather than it being a top-down structure.
Thank you, Tarek. So the policy would be for your organisation, arts organisations, to have ongoing, functioning staff forum. Did everyone get that on Zoom? So we have 22 people on Zoom with us. Was that clear for them? Have they heard it all? Brilliant. So is it what? I mean, how, in practical terms, for you and for your organisation, you now have this policy, you have this staff forum. How is it working? How often is it? Where is it? What time of day does it take? How do you picture it? What's your vision?
So I suppose my instinct for BAC, which would be different for other organizations, is I think maybe 2 or 3 times a year feels about right to kind of be meaningful. It needs to be regular. I think the rules would need to be set up in advance about what's possible and not possible, so everyone feels safe, everyone feels able to engage. I think, again, it would be really, I think one of the tricks you often use is you don't want that kind of thing to become very personal because people become very defensive. If someone goes, oh, like the head of operations needs to, you know, so-and-so needs to do this, that could be difficult for everyone involved. But I think one of the little tricks we use is always to depersonalize everything. So it's sort of say, for me to do my job as artistic director, what I need is X from the organization. And that, so maybe some training or support for each other so we know how to frame the discussion in a way that really doesn't get people's backs up, but creates a really positive environment we want it to happen. And then I think the responsibility has to be on people like me. But you know, I just also want to say organizations are not like a dictatorship. Like it's always like there's lots of people making decisions, you know, but whoever is responsible for the decisions to action some of these things so that it's clear that this is worthwhile and is not a talking shop.
Great, thank you. Do you see any other challenges in making that a reality for you? So for there to be a functioning staff forum that meets quarterly, it's a fair and involving environment, as you explained. Any other sort of challenges to make that happening? What practical challenges do you see?
It feels a very positive thing to do, and I think most of us are doing something like that in similar formats. It's not very expensive to do, which is also a good thing. I think one of the challenges is if we had one of those meetings and it became very difficult, or some personal issues started to surface that weren't the right format, that would need managing quite carefully, if only to look after and care for the people involved. Also, I think for personally, I think sometimes investing in a bit of outside facilitation to kind of enable that to happen would be good. I suppose the other challenge is, sorry, I'm not even using my mic properly. The other challenge is, again, the big question for me is, our staff really matter, and obviously there are a lot of people that we spend a lot of time with, but how do we engage community members? How do we engage young people? How do we engage artists? I think we need to think that through, because is one forum the right place to do that, or do you want to give people space for their specific issues to be raised in a safe way? Also, you're then dealing with people you don't talk to every day, they're not engaged with the organization the same way, so setting those ground rules could be harder. So that feels like a challenge.
Thank you, thank you. Now,
can I summarize
yes,
where we are,
please.
just so, and then, and this is great. Okay, so we have organizations designing regular 2 to 3 times a year forums with staff, but maybe wider than staff, community members, participants, etc., that have support built in and preparation to be able to know what issues to bring, support on the back end to support people and what happened, and that lead to clear decision-making processes and that are informed beforehand about what is possible in decision-making and what isn't possible. So what do we want to add? We can add like 2 things because we're running a little late. I got one right over here. Sarah, thank you. Any amendments, additions? Go ahead.
I would say that I would like to see something like this organized by the people who have the least power in terms of like setting the format of it, because something that exists that's been implemented by the people who are on stage in the CEO or artistic director positions might not be implemented or have be as welcoming a space for the people who have the least power, either within or in relation to the organization.
So the design and potentially the invitation is led by the people who are doing the groundwork at that organization, and they have the resources and support to do that design and implementation. Great. One more thing.
Just to add to that it needs to be built into the workplace. Like it needs to be a job and part of that job, and not an additional task given to people that are already massively overstretched.
So it might require reducing the other things needed to be done around those events. Or, yes, taking into account the other workload. Really quick.
I just see some issues with, there won't be any anonymity in that. So people probably wouldn't feel entirely safe to say what they wanted to say. I'm not sure how you could work that out, but that could be a barrier, you know, again, like arts is so competitive, people are always like trying to cling on to their job if they're able to get one.
So hybrid, potentially a hybrid model events, or in a way that allowed for anonymity as well as speaking out loud. And Tarek, you mentioned that before. Great. Okay, can we, do you want to, Paul, should we ask for an action?
Can we, with that in mind, can we have an action, please?
I think definitely for us at BAC to implement this, and I say maybe look at multiple things to do, I think it's something we should definitely 100% commit to, and I really hear as well that this needs to be created by the people within the organization to make that work and to look at different routes. I think that's 100% something we should be doing, and we are doing to some extent in different formats.
I apologies, I didn't actually fully grasp. Is there a set action?
So
like
we're going to commit to
like,
doing 2 or 3
point?
times a year some sort of open forum which is structured, which enables staff and other stakeholders to influence how we operate and to have that open conversation around that.
All right,
brilliant.
there's going to be
Excellent.
forums here at Battersea Arts. Amazing. All right, should we do the third policy quickly? We're running late, but there's so much great stuff, okay? And if we had more time, which we usually would, you always need more time in democracy. So we're going a little bit fast. Thank you for bearing with us, but there's so much good stuff here. So, third idea.
Okay, I'm going to try and talk really quickly, but the third policy...
Hold that mic up a little higher.
The third policy that's on here is changing the shape of leadership, and I think this sits over all of these other things. If you get this right, then you can deal with the well-being, you can deal with the staff structures. So I think this is really fundamental. How do we diversify the decision-making that our organisations are taking? I think there's a couple of steps from the stuff that we've been reading that we could take to do that. So we have less hierarchical structures within our organisations. An organisation should not be led by one single person. That our boards are made up of a really diverse cross-section of our communities, and we support a different way of boards existing in order for people who would not ordinarily take a place in those situations to step forward. So that might be a workshopping scenario where we pay people to be part of that, to talk about particular issues, and then that feeds into the decision-making of the board. That we really challenge the structures of our staff, we really challenge the staffing structures that we have in our organisations to look at where the gaps are. If we are sitting, for example, in an all-white organisation, there's a serious issue there that we need to address. I think we can do that through our recruitment processes and the way that we talk about our organisations, the access routes that we give to people to work within our organisations. We should pay people, freelancers, we should pay them for their time, for their meetings, for their interviews, and we should pay community producers, people who are not professionals within our organisations by training, but who are professionals within their communities, and the value that they give to us as organisations to be able to reach extraordinary and unusual people that don't normally come through our doors is so invaluable. If we can bring them into our organisations and remunerate them for the time that they spend with us, that will really change the way we make decisions as organisations. I think I just have to say I am so lucky to sit within an organisation that has a non-hierarchical structure. I do not run the organisation. The team runs the organisation. It belongs to them. And I couldn't do my job if I sat in an organisation where I had to be the decision maker, the sole decision maker. I think it's incredibly difficult and hard work for people within structured organisations to make those changes. It's a monumental task to do that. If you're starting from grassroots up and making something different, it's so much easier to embody all of these policies and principles in the work that you want to do and how you run your organisation.
Great. So just a few small things there, right, about leadership. So we're going to make sure that, and how we're going to make sure is a question for me, but any organization, or these organizations at least, should have not one leader, at least more than one leader, yeah? What was the second thing?
Board structures.
What was that? The boards need to be structured so that they're more diverse, bringing in more members of the community, which might require training, workshopping, paying people. Yes, great. The staffing structure needs to be overhauled so that it's not creating a hierarchy and that it's definitely not all white. Lacking diversity means talking about hiring processes, talking about, again, who's on the board, who's in the staff, and then we've got some other things about who's getting paid in the organization to do work, community producers, freelancers, etc. Let's go to the audience first. Any amendments, additions? That's a lot of stuff. Yeah, right here. Do we have a mic? Yeah.
Coming.
I think what EJ was saying about it depends on the type of organisation, how easy it is to say, okay, we'll have shared leadership.
Yep.
But if every arts organisation had to commit to how they include different voices in their leadership and their decision making, then, so like, I'm not saying this is a perfect example, but like the RSC have just done a whole thing about paying people precisely to do that. So whether it's changing the whole leadership structure or doing something different about leadership or putting time limits and terms on leadership, like whatever it is that's about changing up the voices quite regularly.
Great. So that might include term limits. I love term limits in leadership personally. We're talking about in all of these ideas, right? We have 3 arts leaders here, but if we were doing a full legislative theater process, we would make sure that some people who are accountable to other people are here in this panel. So for example, is there arts council? Are there other funders? Are there trustees? Are there other community leaders who hold these organizations accountable, or whatever organizations in some way? So for example, does there need to be a requirement to get funding that there's an examination of participation in leadership in your organization? Potentially. Like what you just said. Great. Yes, one more thing.
It's all well and good talking about less hierarchical structures and fora and all that, but one thing I have not seen mentioned once so far today is accessibility. And that is a massive part of diversity, and even in the most diverse organizations. However many people of different colors, genders, whatever else there is, disability gets left behind. Please include disability within these structures.
Great.
There's access training, sign language, Makaton. I mean, I know disability provision can be expensive, but please, remember those without disabled access requirements as well. I implore every single one of you in the room.
Awesome. So, all of these participation structures, right? Leadership changes need to include access training, need to include considerations about accessibility, need to include considerations about the time it's taking, the space it's in, sign language, captioning, all the things, including all the other requirements that we really need, because we know that, again, it's not just about tokenistic diversity, right? It's really about, we need all these voices to make the leadership of this organization or this arts effort be as good as it can be. That's the goal. That's the intention. Fantastic. Okay, thank you. So, we've got those additions. Yep, so we've got this big, long commitment of leadership changes, participation, paid, access, being considered primarily, some kind of external requirement potentially to be considering leadership in your organization. What is one action you can take? Yeah, just putting you on the spot here.
I think as an organisation we should have some more particular focus on disability for Strike a Light.
And what would be a first action?
My first action would be to work with our producer Jess, who has extensive knowledge, and she will help the rest of the team understand some of those things that we might want to be considering and how we could then put them into actions. We do that as a forum.
So you're going to do an assessment of your current work and policies in terms of how it considers access and accessibility, and then move towards some changes. First action. All right, there's an action. Great. So our last step, this is amazing. We've put all these people on the spot to be mock policymakers today, but as I said at the beginning, we are real people. These are real issues. They are real people. So hopefully these commitments are real. And we will follow up with them as we do. We'll talk about that in our last half hour. But first we want to take a vote, because voting is fun. We're not taking a vote to say one of these is right and one of these is wrong, but if you could prioritize one of these changes, and I know each of them included a lot, that you really wanted to see first, that you wanted to put some energy behind, just so we see where the energy is in the room, we're going to have a vote. So there's 3 things. Let's say you could vote for 2, because I like voting so much, I like to vote for everything. But, so there's 3 things. Let's say you can vote for 2 to prioritize where the action you think should take place. Does that make sense? And you can vote by raising your hand, raising your thumb, whatever we can see, and we're going to take a quick count. So the first idea is new co-created mental health support and health wellness policies in the organization, modeled by the CEO, included in their job description, included in the recruiting, and some independent accountability body. Raise your hand if you feel like that should be one of our priorities. Okay, somebody help me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. All right, that was like 40. Great, okay. So, this is not how you should vote. All right, our second idea is about regular, 2 to 3 times a year, forums, yeah, that are designed by the staff, that include support for preparation and support afterwards, and include decision-making structures, and maybe a hybrid model to take into account different ways of participating. Raise your hand if you would like to see that as a priority. Okay, good. This is good to know. We've got some people, but less. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, beautiful, great. Okay, and the last one is overhauling leadership models so that there's more than one leader in an organization, that there's paid and supported and accessible participation in leadership. Okay, wow, got a lot of hands up. I think that's even the most we have, more or less. So that sounds like that is the #1 priority, followed by, yes. That does not mean, however, that we're not going to hold them to account on the actions that we have asked them to do about all of these. And in a legislative theater process, which again, we are doing a model, but real, because we're real people in real life, today, we will follow up with these 3 leaders who we asked them to do this 5 minutes before the event, to see what, in about 4 weeks, 6 weeks, if they have taken those first actions. And then we will ask Co-Creating Change Network to let you know, because accountability is part of it. So, first of all, I would like to thank everybody for your policy ideas. Give yourselves a round of applause. I would like to thank our policymakers for jumping in and being put on the spot like that. Thank you so much. EJ, Michael, Tarek. And now, well, we'll thank ourselves at the end too, but we should thank all of us for helping to lead that process so much. Our community leaders, primarily. And so, policymakers, you can now leave the stage if you would like. You can take a breath. And we have half an hour left, which is less than we thought, but it's okay. Whatever happens, happens. And the first thing we wanted to do is we're going to open it up to questions. We're going to talk a little bit about how this kind of tool could be useful for change making in arts institutions, right? Or any kind of institution. And as you've seen in the play, we don't just talk about arts institutions using legislative theater. We talk about all kinds of rules and policies and institutions. So we're going to have that second video now if you can. John, thank you, great. We're going to hear just briefly from Councillor Ward, who's a Islington councillor who participated in our March event. And he's particularly a councillor leading on housing and homelessness. And as you saw in the play, and a scene that you didn't see, there was a lot of issues about going to the council to get support on housing. And so he's going to talk about some of the actions that they've taken and some of the impact that that had on the council to participate in this event. And then we're going to open it up for us and for all of you to talk about the potential impacts or questions or thoughts or anything. So let's hear from Councillor Ward. Thank you.
As I say, thank you very much for joining me. You joined us for the Community Leaders original event back in March. Firstly, any initial responses to that event? What stays with you 6 months on?
The first thing that stays with me is what a really creative way to do it. I thought it was just a brilliant session, bringing together lots of different people and looking for really practical ideas about how we can tackle homelessness and how we can bring in people who have had lived experience of homelessness and bringing in their experience. It was a brilliant way of doing it. I think I learned an awful lot from the day, and it's just great to bring together professionals from the field, people with lived experience, and local authorities. It's almost sometimes in the sector as if, like, you know, never those sections of the community shall ever meet, and it was just great to see that. And I know some great kind of policy agreements came out of it. Firstly, about mental health and support, how we could bring in meetings between the community sector and GP practices, sharing best practice, and how we can share the experiences of those seeking support for, you know, with homelessness services. I know that one of the biggest barriers to, you know, making sure someone is in a safe and secure home is just that trust and confidence in being able to speak to, you know, someone in homelessness services, and, you know, make sure that you're speaking the same language and you can identify with the person and relate to them. And, you know, in this world where, you know, homeless services are very much up against it in terms of budget and funding and resources, I know that sometimes, you know, local authorities don't do that as well as they should. So it was great to kind of explore that idea. I know that idea has now been taken forward with yourselves and also with our Housing Needs Service. It is absolutely an approach that could be used elsewhere. I think the main starting point anywhere is communication and engagement, and breaking down those barriers and making sure that community leaders, the local council, and those with lived experience are at least talking to each other. And that's how you start. And, you know, the first thing, you just go into a room with no preconceived agendas. We all want the same thing. We all want to make sure that everybody has a safe and secure place to live, and that everyone can, you know, survive and thrive, and, you know, make sure that their health is being looked after, and they can seek employment, and they can raise their family, or any of those things. You know, we all want the same thing. So I think the best way to replicate it is to just come together and push in one direction to try and tackle homelessness. And I think Islington is a really great example of that, and Union Chapel have been a beacon for that right through the pandemic. I know that you guys were right in the middle of our local homelessness task force right from the beginning, and that was very much a collaboration between Union Chapel, between other charities and grassroots groups. And I think in replicating this in other parts of the country, you know, we should look at.
And, you know, so thank you, Councillor Ward. So, you know, what's interesting to us, to me, I'll say, and then I'm going to pass it over to all of us to think about impacts and all of you for a few minutes. What's interesting to me is, you know, maybe we're all coming from the same place. Maybe we're not. Right? Sometimes we're not, I think. That's actually not as interesting to me. What's interesting to me is that, can we rearrange the power dynamics of a decision-making process through theater, give the decision makers rules and roles that they have to follow, trick all of us into playing a game of democracy, right, through theater, the way we know how to play games, and that leads to tangible, concrete social action that make a more equitable and just community or society or institution. So I wanted to hear from him, right, what are they doing on mental health, community services, and GP practices? What are they doing on the commitments that they made? That's what's most exciting, right? Most powerful, and it's a process, and as we said, can be messy. So we are gonna skip. I'm not gonna say much more than that, because I'm gonna turn it over to our to everyone here to talk about one thing that has been impactful for them in learning this process and doing this process, and one thing that feels like a hope for these tools or this kind of work in the future. And then we're going to turn it over to you. Anybody want to start? They're on, I think. Unless you turned it off.
I would like to share one thing. The one thing that I'd like to share is that this is it's a deceptively simple process that is somewhat, for most people, easy to learn. I have no background in theatre or drama facilitation. However, just after this 10-week course, we also had the opportunity to lead a workshop of our own, which I did with Charlotte and Christina. And it was so heartening, one, to be able to lead this workshop that people really enjoyed and got a lot from, But then seeing after how activated some of the people were from the workshop, that one of the issues that we discussed was access to GP services, and that someone literally marched out there and went and started to talk to and encourage professionals to do something about this. One of the outcomes was that based on this person's effort, there's a series of further workshops taking place sponsored by a local learning disabilities organisation. And also there's a petition going, hopefully it'll be opened up on the parliamentary website, perhaps we can share it with you, around access to GP services and just the challenge now with digitalisation and things going online, that so many people cannot access services appropriately. They can't even book in to go to the local gym or to see their GP, some of these basics of life, and people are being left behind. So someone's activated to, do something about that, someone who's heavily affected by it. And for me, that's filled me with a lot of hope about there's another tool in our collective box to do something about the world. Thank you.
Hi. So asking that question, how has this impacted on me personally? Forums about oppression and seeing oppression everywhere. And there was an incident that happened to me actually. There was a decorator in my house and he came up and he was complaining about a traffic warden who was actually hiding and waiting for him to park his car so he can put a ticket on it. So he was really getting heavy with the traffic warden. And I thought to myself, actually it's not his fault. It goes back to the system which had trickled down or caused him to behave like that. So basically that was the impact on Forum and understanding how oppression is not necessarily because of an individual, but it's based on certain systems that have been set up higher above, and how it does trickle down to individuals. So I kind of see it everywhere nowadays, you know what I mean? How oppression works and how it's not necessarily our fault, and also how we can make a change by using these creative tools.
I think impact would be just the potential, I think, for this methodology and approach to actually work in co-creation. It's about actually kind of forcing and holding people to task, and can be a way of actually getting people to commit to change, not just talking about it, which I see a lot, and I've seen a lot in the arts, and I hope there will be some real change as a result of what we did today. I think that, it's a methodology that encourages a lot of generosity and vulnerability from everyone that takes part in it. You have to be prepared to put yourself on the line, share your experiences, and build solidarity with other people. And I think that's really powerful to see people in higher positions in life, in the world, in their jobs, putting themselves in a position of vulnerability where they might get things wrong and they might not be seen in the way they're usually seen. In terms of my hopes for the future with it, I'm very interested in adapting this material to make it much more accessible. I think it can be delivered in a different way. There's ways of breaking it down and using it to work with different communities, for example, people who don't speak English as a first language, or people with neurodiversity. I'm currently running a series of workshops with a charity for a neurodiverse advocacy group, and I've adapted the material hugely, but it's still, at its core, I'm hoping, working in the same way, and people are enjoying it. I mean, it's also fun, right? It is fun, and it can be fun, and we didn't do much of the fun stuff today, but it can also just be really kind of enjoyable way of working. But yeah. So I guess for me it's been more about how this process made me realize that we kind of need to be more active, and we all became kind of a passive observer. I really talk about the fast that this process is going, and how many things we can, solve with creativity. Because for me, creativity has always been solve problems for everybody. And that's the impact that I, got from this experience. Thank you.
And we're going to turn it over to you, and I'll say my hope is, in my work, I do a lot of legislative theater in different cities around housing and healthcare and climate justice, and I find that actually, maybe I'm wrong, but I find that in some ways arts institutions are slower to think about using artistic methodologies to address their structural challenges. And I think, having been part of lots of arts institutions, also like trying to be taken seriously and maybe some of that stuff. And so one of my hopes is that arts institutions can think about how can they use their tools of creativity and fun to change the dynamic and the power setup and the decision-making processes themselves around the structural problems that we know they're facing. So we want to turn it over to you for the last minutes to talk about or ask questions or share ideas about how this could be useful, or, anything, questions, how we made it, whatever, in terms of maybe change in arts institutions. Whatever you want to ask or say, I think, right now. Right, Sarah? Yes. Yes.
I just want to share that I think it feels really interesting to be within a process where sort of the end goal is discomfort, because I think, like, certainly in my experience in arts organizations, there's a lot of discomfort on like the front of house level, or people who work in really precarious jobs, and that kind of like constantly having to go, okay, I'm adjusting to this thing and I feel uncomfortable, or I've been asked to do something that I don't want to do, and also the same as like freelancers or whatever. And I think you become less uncomfortable often the higher up the organization you go, and I think it's really interesting to put people on the spot and invite them to sit in a space of uncertainty and precarity for even a controlled period of time. Because I think it makes the stakes get higher if you feel uncomfortable.
Watching people who hold traditional power positions have to be, and forcing them to be vulnerable or uncomfortable. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. I'm all about that. I want that more. What else?
I'd like to add something. I wrote do less, but do it better. I think we're all doing so much all the time, and often arts organisations, particularly after the last 18 months, are working to reduce capacity, but we're still trying to churn out. And if we want to consider everything that's been talked about today, potentially do less, but do it better, and do it in a more embedded way, and support not only your staff, but also the communities that you're working with.
So one of the things that might be needed to make some of these things possible is to do less in order to do this kind of stuff better. I see somebody in the back.
I'm running.
Hi, David.
Good afternoon. Hi, Katy, Michael, and the rest. I love what you do, and I'm a massive fan, as you know. We obviously use this technique within the arts and homelessness to help with policy change at council level. And I believe that this form of art actually helps show the value of art to people of power. So, for instance, people who have the ability to make changes at government and city level suddenly are introduced to art which they're not used to. And they don't really expect to see on those certain days. So when you do bring up the people of power onto a stage and they do feel uncomfortable, well, that's because they feel guilty that they've never seen this sort of art before. And they're actually being held to account in an artistic manner and put on the spot. And I find that really, really, really powerful because that's how we make real change. And I believe the arts has the ability to bring the right type of people into the right rooms and make change.
Awesome. So helping people see the value of art as an actual tool for change making, yes, all about it. And that artistic methods can hold people accountable in a different way. Yeah, cool.
Hi there. I work for a youth homelessness charity, and I think this has great application for not just arts organisations, but yeah, for my organisation, I'd love to talk more about that. But I was interested in when you're going through this process, it asks a lot of people with lived experience to share, to perform, and to kind of do this work, which I think is very exciting and empowering. But how do you, through your process, safeguard those experiences for those people with lived experiences who are having to do a lot of work to share those with policymakers and leaders?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So I'll say one or two things and then see if anyone else wants to jump in. We spent 10 weeks, as somebody said, making these scenes as well as learning how to lead this kind of process. And not just this process, but the other games and steps that lead to making those scenes. And that process is a closed process for the group to decide what are the stories we want to share, how do we want to share them, how do we get energy from the rest of the group to know that we are together having similar experiences, so we're never just isolating unless somebody wants to say that someone experienced something, but it's a group's, right? And that we're using steps and creative processes along the way to develop those scenes and plays and issues so that at any point we can pull back and say we don't want to go that way, we want to go that way. So that whatever issues are coming up are from the group. That doesn't mean to say that it can never be challenging or it can never be scary, right? And we build in safeguards, but I think the most important thing is that this is a community organizing process before it's a political change process, and they have to go together. Anybody want to add anything about that?
Oh, I'm coming over. Make a joke, someone.
Joke.
Oh,
Somebody's got something? Oh, what was that?
Got something online I want to share from Rachel. Do you think it's essential that the performance is a reenactment of the gritty, actual situation, or can it be transported to a metaphorical situation, more performative, otherworldly, to access the situation in another way?
Yeah.
We did look at other ways of kind of communicating the emotion behind what we were doing, which I suppose is kind of, well, not I suppose, it's definitely part of the point of working in this way, is that by forcing someone to watch a play with real experiences in it, that they know are real, right? So theatre isn't always a real experience, or we don't always know it's based on a real experience, but that's made clear in this way of working. We also used elements like image theatre, which is much more metaphorical, much more about gesture and physicality, and some areas of aesthetics of the oppressed stuff, which is other ways that you can kind of look at the issues, whether it's through poetry or drawing. And we talked about including, or music or whatever, we thought about including some of those things in the play, but in the end, we didn't. I can't remember why. Sorry, Katie, I can't remember. Time. We didn't have time maybe to work those things in, but you could juxtapose the gritty reality with some of those things to offer different ways of seeing and looking at it.
Yeah, and absolutely, there have been legislative theater plays that have been musicals, that have been mostly poems, there can be set in the future, right? I think the key is, do I have enough information about the problem that I can recognize the problem in the world? Right? So that's what's key. Other than that, you can do whatever you want.
I've got another great point online. I think we have to be honest that arts projects can fail or even damage too if it's not done right. Until we make time to look at what doesn't work, we'll get stuck in this cycle of discussion. And that's from Inez.
Yes. Absolutely. Anything else anybody wants to ask or say about sort of applications? Hear about? Anybody? It's time for lunch. Last moments. Okay.
So I just quickly like to, because we've all thanked everybody here, so I'd just like everyone to put their hands together for Katy herself. Thank you, Katy.
Thanks, David. And I actually wanted for all of us to be able to take a little bow or have another acknowledgement. First, that as we said at the beginning, that the learning of doing this and the sharing of these tools is part of the process to me, right? And to us. That in Theatre of the Oppressed, where this comes from, we talk about multiplication. And this was a process of multiplication, and that goes on for a long time. And I think that's really important in a lot of the policies we've talked about. We need to multiply leaders. We need to build that in, just like we've been building it into this training process. So this is the second time, really, that we've facilitated a show together. And also that I just love seeing 5 or 6 people leading an event together and passing things along in this idea of modeling, not just one person needs to lead the whole thing. So let's have another cheer for everybody from this group.